Hello and welcome to a new edition of True Audiophiles, where today I'm going to do a sound quality shootout on the Cars self-titled first album. Main reason for doing this is because Rhino just released a high fidelity version of the album, and it was cut by Kevin Gray from the original analog master tapes and pressed at, I believe, optimal on 180 gram vinyl. So I got a copy of that one this week, and it is right here with the nice obi that explains everything. And I got, I don't know, they are limited to 5,000. I had number 4,000 something, not that that matters much, but it's a nice gatefold where in this particular case they actually put the inner sleeve content on the gatefold instead of putting it in an inner sleeve, and they used a regular, well, it's a paper with poly lining inner sleeve, but I always replace those because I clean my records and put them into a upgraded sleeve. So anyway, so we've got that copy, and I decided to do a shootout with all the other versions that I have. And what I have, and I think I've got them in order of when they were released. I have a Rhino reissue that was done, I want to say, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, maybe at most. This was done, actually it says January 2016. What do you know? So it was done about 7 years ago. I didn't even think it was that old. But anyway, pressed at QRP, as you can see right here. And it was cut at Capitol. So I don't know this for a fact, but I know that a lot of Capitol things that are mastered at Capitol, I should say, are done digitally. So I believe this is digital, but I don't know that for a fact. If anybody knows or can get clarity on that, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts and what you know. But anyway, so there's that version. Then I also have the mobile fidelity version right here. This one is actually a half-speed mastering cut from the analog master tapes. And yes, from the analog master tapes Mofi. It was done that long ago. So, and it was mastered or cut by Sean Britton over at Mobile Fidelity, not Craig, who usually does the cuts. So anyway, and I got here a number 5478. Again, not that that matters, but that is the copy I have. And then I have an early pressing. Don't know if it's necessarily the first pressing. I'm guessing it's not, but I don't know that for a fact. But it's definitely early. It's got the red label on it, and it was cut by someone at Sterling. I don't remember who at the moment, but cut at Sterling for them. And so those are the four that I have. And just to kind of run over this, if you haven't watched any of my sound quality shootouts, which I apologize for those who have and have to sit through this again, but basically my process for doing a sound quality shootout is I listen to the newest release that I got, if there's a new release to be had, and in this case there is with the Rhino High Fidelity. So I listen to that one all the way through, kind of assess the tracks and see which one or ones I feel would be the best to compare on all of the different versions of the album I have. And in this particular case, I listened to it and decided on You're All I've Got Tonight, because I thought it did a really good job of having some nice effects, good wide sound stage, like the keyboards were really, really wide in the stage, and they kind of moved around a little bit. They were kind of subtle in how they moved as well, which was one of the things I picked up on the Kevin Gray cut. So that was the one I decided to go with on all four versions. So again, listened to the Rhino first off. I thought it had a great even tone to it. I think it had a pretty good wide sound stage, a relatively deep sound stage. You know, not the deepest I've ever heard, but it was pretty deep. And, you know, if I had to make a complaint at all about it, you know, I thought the vocals sounded great. I thought guitars and keyboards sounded pretty good. I thought the drums, for the most part, sounded good. I think that the cymbals sounded okay. I thought that, especially the hi-hats, though, didn't sound all that good. But as I found out later, that really is a trait throughout the entire different versions of them. It's just not something that was not well recorded or well mixed, in my opinion. Anyways, I didn't like the sound of the cymbals as much as I can in typical releases that I hear. So anyway, that I did, like I mentioned earlier on You're All I've Got Tonight. There's a keyboard in the right speaker, and the one kind of cool thing that I noticed is it kind of goes wider to the right, and then a little bit more centered and a little bit more to the right. And especially on the Kevin Gray, I noticed it go beyond the speakers, which was really cool. That's one of the things that led me to want to do that song instead of the other ones, because it really did a great job of doing that. You got moving in stereo, which is kind of cool because you had different stuff moving in stereo, and it would have been kind of a cool thing to listen to. But I think the subtlety of that keyboard and how it kind of moved a little bit from right to center right a little bit really drew me into that song and allowed me to feel like I could make a good comparison with all the rest of them. So the next one I put on was the Rhino 2016 version, and I thought it sounded pretty good. The soundstage definitely wasn't as wide. I'm not sure. The depth was probably relatively similar, but probably not quite as good. It definitely didn't have quite as nice a bass as the Kevin Gray one, which I failed to mention. The Kevin Gray one really had a great punch and great deep, tight bass on it, which really drew me in on it quite a bit. And this one didn't have quite the bass that the Kevin Gray cut did. Still sounded okay, and it was still there, but it just wasn't as prevalent. And then the sound stage wasn't as wide. It was definitely narrower, and you could still hear the keyboard kind of going back and forth a little bit, but it didn't go beyond the speakers like it did on the Kevin Gray cut. And then listen to the Mobile Fidelity. When I first heard the Mobile Fidelity when I got it initially, I really enjoyed it, and I thought it sounded really good. And then I listened to it in comparison to the other copies that I have, which I didn't do when I first got it, and I noticed how it just wasn't quite as good. It kind of was lifeless a little bit, kind of a little bit on the muddier side in a certain sense, and also the definition just wasn't there. It definitely had the wide sound stage like the Kevin Gray one did, but it just didn't seem to have the excitement of the others, which I think I've sort of read that in some of the other reviews that I've seen of it. But I'm not going to necessarily say it was bad, but it wasn't good. But it definitely had, I would say it and the Kevin Gray had the best soundstage width. The other ones I listened to didn't have quite as good a soundstage width, which kind of leads me to the early pressing. The early pressing, again, it sounded actually pretty similar to the 2016 version. Similar soundstage width, probably similar soundstage depth as well. It was a little bit more like the upper mids or lower highs were definitely a little bit more pronounced on it. And it lacked the higher end treble, I think, that like the Kevin Gray cut had. So it definitely lacked that, but I'd still say it was pretty good, overall. But didn't, again, lack the wider sound stage, and it lacked the higher treble and the deeper, tighter bass too. I mean, it had the bass, just not as much. So I would say they all sounded decent. Pretty disappointed by the Mobile Fidelity, and I have to say, if I were to rate them in my own personal preferences, that is, I would rate probably the Mobile Fidelity, maybe potentially last, but it's really close between it and the early pressing, because it does have that wider soundstage, probably a little bit deeper soundstage, and it doesn't sound terrible. But on the second hand, the early pressing has, I think, better treble and just a little bit better, clarity in my opinion, on the higher end, even though it probably doesn't have as much. But actually, the 2016 wasn't bad. It was definitely up there, but I'd still rate that second. And the new Kevin Gray one is definitely really good. I think that's your go-to one if they're still available, which I think as of me doing this, they were still available. I would grab yourself a copy of it, because it definitely is the best version I've heard. and it's a great album as well. So if you like the Cars, or even if you're kind of just a little bit of a fan of the Cars, but you like good sounding versions of the albums, and this is probably one of their best albums, so it'd be a great one to get, and I think it would definitely be the go-to here. So that is what I have to say about it. I'd love to hear your input. Have you done any sound quality shootouts of all the different versions of the Cars self-titled first album? And what are your thoughts on it? What's your opinion? I'd love to hear it. Please put it in the comments below if you would. I would love that. Hit that like button if you liked this video. Subscribe to my channel if you liked it as well. I really love seeing subscribers watching my videos. And hit that alert bell to let you know when my new videos come out. So that's everything I have for this week. Next week, I am going to be doing a sound quality shootout with a John Coltrane Sound Rhino High Fidelity. So stay tuned for that one. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for subscribing if you have. You guys have yourself a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week. Thanks a lot.